Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to the public reading and dialogue on Octavia Butler and the Future, organized by SFTU's Morris J. Watts Center for Dialogue. My name is Jacqueline Blair-Marr, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a settler on these lands with mixed French and Guinean ancestry. And I'm joining you from Treaty 7 territory, Blackfoot Confederacy, in an area known as Mohkinstsis, and now called as Calgary, where I work at Calgary Foundation. I'm also a dialogue fellow with the Center for Dialogue, and I am very excited and honored to be your host today and to have the opportunity to engage with these amazing Adrienne Marie Brown and her fellow Octavia Butler scholars. So in one of the sessions yesterday, Adrienne reminded us of the importance of connecting with the land. And one part of that is acknowledging the land and finding out the truth about the original people who have been caretakers of that land for millennia. So I'd like now to invite Tatalia Men to lead us through this.
Great, God, Chenkum and Tomi. So happy to be here with you all, and just so proud to be here representing the Squamish Nation. So I'll get into it. Chen Quinman Tomi to Noyap Tensel Quatos, Natha Ants Tatalia Man, Paisley Nahaney, Queens Na, Eslahan Ohomeo, Squahomish Oath Ohomeo, Almanox and Squallowen. I just said I'm so grateful to be here with you all, our respected guests and relatives and friends. I introduced myself with my two names. So I have the name Paisley Nahaney that I use more day to day. And I also carry the ancestral name Tatalia. And I share that name Tatalia with my mother, Michelle Tatalia Nahaney. And I'm known as Tatalia Mun, and Mun in our Squamish language actually means little one. It's the name of the preschool on our reserve. But I'll be Tatalia Mun, little Tatalia, really, really late into life. And like so many of our Squamish things, there's so many teachings embedded in everything. And that teaching there is just that, you know, we don't stop learning or unlearning or growing once we're not a mun. We really do that our whole lives. So I just love to share that teaching. I told you I'm from the village of Eslahan. If you happen to be on the Squamish Musqueam Tsleil-Waututh territories, Aslahan is very close to Lonsdale Key. And my family still lives in Aslahan. We actually still perform ceremony there. We performed ceremony last week. We have a smokehouse that we smoke fish and meat in. We carve there on where our family's from. So a lot of people don't know that, you know, these amazing, beautiful practices that our ancestors held on to for us are still being practiced on this land, you know, maybe even just right around the corner from where you are. And then I said that I belong to the Squamish Nation. So we don't say that we're from the Squamish Nation. We say Squamish Ohomeo, and Ohomeo translates to belonging. So I belong to that nation. And then I said Onwanaxin Squallowin. We love to say this as Squamish people, and it means that I'm here with a really good feeling in my heart. And for me, you know, the practice of Onwanaxin Squallowin, it's not just something that I can say. I actually really have to prepare to show up here to spend this time with you with that good feeling in my heart. So for me, I smudged, I had some water, I got some sun on my face, so I knew that I could show up here as my best self. So I'm zooming in from the shared territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, now colonially known as Vancouver, BC. And I'm so honored and welcomed to welcome you to this territory, even if you're joining us virtually. And just before we get started in this amazing session, I wanted to share a little something with you. It's a little bit sci-fi. It's also some Squamish history of the land to really ground us in today's session. So I live in a part of Vancouver called the West End. It's really close to the ocean. And I'm close to a lot of village sites where my ancestors are from. And I feel so lucky to be able to see the trees and the oceans that my ancestors saw and took care of. So I'm by Kwai Kwai, which is one of our biggest village sites. I'm also by Sanok. So Sanok was once a fishing village. I can actually see it from my balcony right now. And it was a place that was full of berries, so many berries that we had too many of them that we would invite our neighboring nations to come and harvest berries with us there. And right across from Sanok, which is just blocks away from where I am, is Aeolchin. It's a beach. It's now called Sunset Beach. But you know, I'm going to ask you to remember Sanok and Aeolchin because they're going to come up in the story. But before I get into that, you know, I've always been taught that the ancestors, they cared for this land because they loved us, because they dreamt of us, they envisioned us doing amazing things, connecting in events like this together, learning together, living together, loving together. They dreamed of that, and that's why they cared for the land, because that love for us and that love is still here in the land for everybody. So I love to talk about those ancestors when I acknowledge territory and let them know that I'm sending them all of that love back and that I just love them so much. So back to Sanok and Aeolchin, and I'm going to be quick because I know we want to get into this amazing session. But Sanok was actually a reserve that we were allocated to or confined to after contact. It was made into a reserve. So, you know, after we got taken from the land and put into these, you know, small places on that reserve Sanok, they, you know, made that a home for themselves in the best way that they could after contact. And it was retaken from us to make way for a railway. And this photo you see right here is, you know, actually our people, our ancestors from Sanok, and they were put on a barge and they were sent away from their home. So this is that photo of those ancestors being sent away from Sanok. So now, recently, during a big storm here in Vancouver, a different barge got pushed by the ocean, got pushed by the waves, and is now still stuck at AE Alchin. So right across from where those ancestors were taken. And I've been thinking about this so much. So we started, the city made these signs and they put them up next to this new barge. And they said, barge chilling beach. And as host nations people, as local Indigenous people, we've been pushing for generations for our place names to be put around the city. And, the barge chilling beach sign, it got a little renovation. I like to say that it got improved, and somebody graffitied it with AE Alchin, that place name. So then the city, cleaned it up, got rid of what they would call graffiti, what I would call correction. And then next slide. It happened the very next day, E. Alchin back there at that place name. And, for generations, we've been trying to get our place names out there. And now, the city is actually talking about, okay, this is going to happen. We need to obviously make this happen. Let's put up these place names around the city. And we've been working for that for generations. And and it's all because of a barge that's so similar to the ones that displaced our ancestors. And I can't help to dream of those ancestors getting fed up, being like, where are our place names? Where are our place names? And, are those barge ancestors teaming up with our relative, the ocean, and making it happen for us? So I just wanted to share that with you, some Squamish, sci-fi, some Squamish history. And I'm just so happy to welcome you to this session. I had the pleasure of spending time with Adrienne Maree Brown and other Black and Indigenous geniuses yesterday and dreaming up of a future. And I was in a breakout room and we talked about abolition, but we really talked about Black liberation and Indigenous sovereignty needing each other, and also just the joy that is Black and Indigenous kinship and shared futures. So those are the things I wanted to share. I'm so happy to welcome you to this territory, to welcome you to this session, inviting you to practice that Onwin and Squalowin while you're here and you're getting those good teachings. So Hoichka, Chenkumintomi, I raise my hands up to all of you in the deepest respect. And I know that you're just gonna have such an incredible session. So Hoichka, thank you so much. Those are my words.
Thank you so much, Tatalia, man. That story really is such a great example of the perseverance and resilience and continued fighting over generations by Indigenous communities to ensure that, the cultures and traditions are alive and thriving for generations to come. So we are going to begin today's session. Just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing today, with some context setting by Adrienne Maree Brown, where she will give some context about her dialogue on the future with her fellow amazing Octavia Butler scholars. And then following that conversation, you'll be invited as the audience to engage in some dialogical reflections on what you heard with Adrienne and the scholars. On the next slide, we have a few community guidelines to help frame our session for today that we would like you to take a look at. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So just taking some time to review these and to keep these in mind as we're going through our session. And really to help us all with being present in our session today, we'll begin with a quick exercise to connect with our body and to ground ourselves. So if you're comfortable, if you'll close your eyes, if that's comfortable for you, you can stay seated or you can stand up. And just beginning by noticing your breath. And then you can connect to the top of your head and feel like a rope pulling up the top of your head, and stand up or sit up a little bit taller and really connecting with your inner dignity. And then now notice the back of your body, the back of your head, your back, your buttocks, the back of your legs, and really acknowledge your ancestors and the past experiences that brought you here today. Now notice the sides of your body, the sides of your arm, side of your legs, all the way down. And think about connecting to your friends, family, and community. Just reach out a little bit bigger, take up a little bit more space in this world, and connect with those around you. And now noticing the front of your body, your forehead, your nose, your chest, the front of your legs, and connect to future generations, your hopes and dreams for your future to come. Now take 2 deep breaths. And open your eyes. And now I'd like to invite Adrienne Marie Brown to take the stage, really set the context for today's dialogue. Earlier today, Adrienne met with a group of chosen Octavia Butler scholars for a private retreat. And we're really grateful to have them here for a recap or continuation of what they reflected on throughout the day. So welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you, Jacka. Thank you for that beautiful grounding. And thank you to Talia Paisley for the land acknowledgement and the learning and letting us know what's happening now and how it reverberates through time. That's actually really relevant to what we were working on today. I am so grateful for everyone coming today. We've had the kind of day you dream of if you're a scholar of Octavia. And many times throughout the day, we pinched ourselves like, wow, this just happened. Like, we're really here. This is happening. So I hope that regardless of what happens today, that we're able to transmit that feeling to you of just how magical it is to have a positive obsession and not be alone in it. So I want to share, first of all, we did say that people should be fairly familiar with Octavia coming today, but just in case anyone slid in and is not familiar, a reminder, Octavia E. Butler was a Black science fiction writer born in Pasadena, California, who made her way up to Seattle over the course of her life. And she wrote short stories, novels, and essays. And she was the winner of many awards, including the Hugo, the Nebula, and the MacArthur Genius Grant. And she wrote Black stories, stories of young Black protagonists who had new visions for the future, who were negotiating with aliens, who were figuring out how we survive. And her work was incredible and visionary and prolific and dense and intriguing and compelling. And she has created a huge following, a huge lot of people who are like, how do I dance with her wisdom? How do I dance with her work? She's here on my shoulder. This is a whole collection of things that are Octavia related content. And I hope you all can grab some Octavia things in your life too. And I just want to share the 9 scholars who came together today are all at various points in our career, and we've applied her work in different projects and contexts. And I just want to share with you between the 9 of us, here's the projects that this group has either generated or participated in. The Parable of the Sower Opera, the creation of visionary fiction, the anthology Octavia's Brood, the podcast Octavia's Parables, the podcast How to Survive the End of the World, a web portal system if you want to have Octavia Butler as a life coach, an Earthseed community in Durham, North Carolina, the concept of emergent strategy, the Octavia E. Butler Tarot deck, which I have a sample version of here. It's happening, it's real. We're almost there, y'all. Help us manifest, like, universe, clear the way so that this deck can be in everyone's hands. But the tarot deck, the Octavia E. Butler Legacy Network, a drafted biography of Octavia, a digital apothecary, and then lots of community and interdependence and teaching in our own lives. So first, we just immersed ourselves in like all the world that we have built around our love for her. And then we got to write fan fiction. And we basically wrote fan fiction. We recapped the first 2 parables, which I'm going to recap again here, just in case anyone's like, I still don't really understand that story. And I'm going to try to do it in a good way that doesn't take anything away from the story, but spoilers ahead. But we recapped the first 2 parables, and the parables are supposed to be a trilogy. And Octavia drafted many, many, many drafts of the 3rd book, The Parable of the Trickster, but she was not able to finish it. So as scholars, we first reviewed everything that we know of what she was attempting with all of her drafts. And then we wrote fan fiction of our ideas of what we would do to further the parable series. And it was amazing. It was absolutely outstanding. So first, I'm going to recap the first 2 parables just so that everyone's like, okay, we're right on the same page. Just about, we made a long paragraph to grab the whole story. And then 5 of the scholars are here with us right now. And we're just going to go through, and each person's going to share a bit of what they see as the wisdom Octavia offered us for moving into the future, right, through the parables. So I hope that that is as exciting to you as it is to us. We're going to just be geeking out in the realm. And, one thing we also really recognized is like, it matters what you pay attention to. That all of us were talking about how when we became scholars, people didn't know about Octavia's work. People didn't recognize her offhand. People didn't understand how prescient her work was and how much she was paying attention and what she was offering to us. And by being nerds, by geeking out about her work and talking about it tirelessly and putting it in everything we did, we recognized that our love of her has had an imprint that has changed how people look at Octavia and how many people see her work. And that felt really good. And it's an invitation to you, like, if you love something, pay attention to it, evangelize about it, proselytize about it, like, tell people about your love. Let your love center your life. Let it guide you into right relationships with the people that you need to be geeked out with. Because the group that we have, it really feels like a siblingship of love for Octavia. Okay, you can feel my geekiness. So I'm going to read you this paragraph of what are the parables. So the parable of the sower and the parable of the talents is the duology that's actually published. And I'm just going to share the story. So Lauren Olamina, who's 15 years old when we meet her, is a young Black girl who lives in a gated community with her Christian father and her family. She has what is considered a disability at the time called hyperempathy, where she feels what's happening to other people as if it's happening to her. If she witnesses someone being cut, she'll bleed. So she has this hyperempathy syndrome. And she is birthing a new set of beliefs in this gated community that is pretty Christian. Her belief system is that human destiny is to take root amongst the stars, and that God is change, the force of change, rather than being a singular entity with a beard. It's the force, the divine force of change. She believes that she must prepare herself and her community for the inevitable changes that are coming because the conditions they're in are untenable. They live in this gated community where they're able to kind of eke together meeting their needs. And outside the gate are people living in total squalor, total suffering and abnegation, slavery, rape, all of it's happening out there. And so she recognizes even at that young age that the circumstance is untenable. So she actually loses her whole family leading up to and during the incident, which the gated community falls, the walls fall down, and she has to begin her journey initially solo and then with found members of her community. They make their way north and they're gathering other people who they witness, people who need help, people who are in desperate situations, and eventually people who are willing to consider Earthseed, what Lauren is calling the belief system that she's generating. They eventually meet a very hot older man named Bankole, who has access to some land in Northern California, where they end up and they found the Acorn community. So that's the parable of the sower. They lead, that's the first journey. Then the parable of the talents, we're in the Acorn community. They're having a very hard life, but it's functional. They're practicing and growing Earthseed as a belief system. And it feels like they're going to be able to grow this. And they actually come across someone who Lauren thought was dead, her brother Marcus, and he was actually enslaved. They buy him out of slavery, but she and Marcus are unable to find a peaceful relationship. He's deeply committed to Christianity. She's deeply committed to Earthseed. And he leaves, and it's quite possible that he's the reason for what happens next, which is that a Christian group comes and a radical fundamentalist Christian group comes and takes over Acorn, renames the camp Christian, steals the children away and disperses them in their community, and then proceeds to torture, rape, and abuse and kill most of the members of Acorn. This happens for a year. At the end of that time, they are able to liberate themselves, but it's a violent liberation, and they have to release Acorn. They have to scatter themselves. And Lauren is then committed to trying to find her daughter who was stolen, Larkin, and she's trying to figure out how to still continue Earthseed. So she's going door to door like an evangelical organizer, and spreading the word of Earthseed, finding unlikely allies, including people with more resources to spread the word. It takes decades for her to find her child. She realizes her brother knew where the child was all along, and they're never able to make that authentic familial relationship actually happen. But the vision of Earthseed is realized, and the first ship, triggeringly named the Christopher Columbus, sets sail. So that's the end of the parable of the talents. And we went through all of that together. And then the parable of the trickster, what we know about it is that folks have landed on this planet called Bo, after the rare rainbows that happen there, and that it's miserable. They are super miserable. They're not able to make a way, and that there seems to be some pattern of illusions and trickster energy happening on the planet that's giving them hallucinations. And we know that Octavia did possibly 80 drafts of this story trying to get at it, and found a lot of hopelessness and despair, actually. So she went off and wrote Fledgling, which, thank God, that's a fine diversion. I love when people are like, I'm distracted, let me create a whole other classical text. So that kind of brings, I think, everyone up to speed of where we started. And now I would love to bring on, let's start with Toshi. Toshi, will you come on first? Join me on stage, and hi, baby. Hi, friend. So Toshi, can you give us about 5 minutes of what you think Octavia offered us and where she was pointing us towards with her work of the parables?
Absolutely. Multiple things. I think one of the most important ones was to actually say where you are, like to really take in the reality of your situation. And as wonderful and abundant as it may be, or as terrible and like, I can't believe this is happening, to not deny your surroundings and your circumstances, but to actually, accept and say and be in conversation about what you are experiencing. And then the other, I think, is the destiny. She set a destiny. Our destiny is to take root amongst the stars. I equate that with the thing that I was told as a child all the time, which was to keep my head up and my gaze up, like never bow your head down. You get an excuse for praying, but otherwise you almost defiantly, my parents, my grandparents, all of Black people around me, if they saw you go like this, they would be like, put your eyes up. And it's to say that you might be looking at trouble, but trouble is not the only thing that you see, and that to cast yourself and beyond the trouble. And it gives you room in your brain to think of solutions. It gives you room in your brain to affirm. And as your body is being shocked by something horrific, this casting your gaze through and above, around, whatever ways around it, buys you time to take a breath and think, which is very hard in traumatic situations. And then the third thing is practice. And like, she just is like, what, like, where are you? Where do you live? What's near you? Where do you have a map? Could you live like somewhere for 3 days? Do you know where water is? Are you in the best condition that you can be, no matter what the state of your physical being is? Do you know the people who live next door to you? Have you attempted to like meet people that live in your building and you don't know, what is your escape route for anything, a fire? How long was it take you to get to some place you need to be in an emergency situation? Practice these things. Do you have it to go back? You need a grab pack and go back for anything. It doesn't have to be the worst thing. It could be just all the lights went out and you need to go somewhere. So she had such a good sense of skills and practiced them, didn't just have them, but learned herself. And I would say, Adrienne, especially when it came to hyper empathy, which could have been seen as a weakness. So she was like, hyper empathy is when she was feeling any violence she witnessed. She also could feel any, sensuality she witnessed, but the violence, was the most concerning. So she could literally have the experience of dying if she saw someone die. So she practiced. Well, I'm gonna go shoot like a small bird and see how it feels in my body. I'm gonna shoot something a little bit bigger and see how it feels in my body. We're not trying to do that, but you wanna practice like your condition in different ways and places and circumstances. So I think Octavia was giving us all of these nutrients for the reality of the world that we're in. And participate in the steps that you want to take in the environment that you are in as you take them. If you can walk, but you're going to be walking through like a horrible condition because you didn't vote for somebody or you didn't create the world, then you didn't participate. You just got yourself walking. Participate in the environment that you actually want to move around in.
Thank you. I love that. I love all that wisdom. Correct. Yes. Thank you. Tananarive Due, can I invite you up here next? Tananarive Due, horror fiction writer, friend of Octavia's, brilliant person and beautiful mama. Hi.
Great. Thank you so much. So excited to be here. Thank you for that, Toshi. That leads really nicely into what I wanted to talk about. I will say first very quickly that I was lucky enough to know Octavia, not the friend that my husband, Stephen Barnes, was with her for 20 years, where they could walk back and forth to each other's houses when she lived on West Boulevard in Los Angeles, but very lucky to have heard her laugh and made her laugh and spent some time with her. And one of the things that she made so clear during an interview we did her in 2000 that appeared in American Visions magazine is that her writing was meant as a clarion call. I mean, any of you who have read Octavia understand that this was not meant to be leisurely reading. This is action-oriented fiction designed literally to save humanity, because Octavia put a lot of her being into her art and had a lot of time, therefore, to observe. So she saw the world around her. She saw where we were headed. She saw the folly of hierarchy. She saw the ways we were damaging the environment. And she was hoping that her fiction would help lead us. And I will say that in the past few years, Octavia's wisdom, her drive, and her vision have had a much more practical part of my life in a couple different ways. First and more recently, I just finished an almost 2-year webinar series with Reverend Dr. Monica A. Coleman. Octavia tried to tell us. In fact, I'll put the URL in the chat before I finish. But that was just such a life-saving. Adrian was a guest, Toshi was a guest. In fact, many people here participating were guests. Every month, we interrogated these questions of really survival. You know, remember when the pandemic first started, we did not know what the first 6 months would hold. We couldn't find toilet paper. We were watching the Tiger King. What was wrong with us? But in any case, those monthly webinars discuss those ideas of preparation, survival. If no one is coming to save you, how do we save ourselves? And brilliant guest after brilliant guest after brilliant guest came to share their story, their wisdom, how they were coping. And that enabled me to cope. So that was the most recent thing. But I do want to go back briefly to the beginning of the last, I won't mention the name of the last president, but at the beginning of his administration, I published a blog post called Surviving President Lessons from the 1960s on Octavia E. Butler. And I landed on one of my favorite parables from Parable of the Sower, which is action-oriented. And it is belief initiates and guides action, or it does nothing. And that was the first message I wanted to give my sort of stunned readers, all of us trying to understand how this had happened, fearful as well we should have been for what the future would hold. And I really laid out in a very methodical way what specific lessons I thought Octavia would want us to remember, with the encouragement, especially to artists, to ask yourself what novel Octavia E. Butler would have written to confront these times. Then write your version of that, because writing is a form of resistance. Writing was the form of resistance that Octavia chose. My late mother, Patricia Stevens Dew, was a civil rights activist in the 60s who was jailed many times, tear gassed, wore dark glasses the whole time I knew her, basically her entire adult life, 80% of the time indoors, because a police officer threw a tear gas canister in her face. And I saw such kinship between my mother, who was in the streets, and Octavia, who was in her art, and how both of them in tandem were messaging a path forward. And the first thing was to move away from numbness and denial. I think these apply, unfortunately, very well today as well. Move away from numbness and denial. Stop looking for heroes and heroines. They are in the mirror. They are us, right? Choose your spot and defend it. It can be so overwhelming to look at everything we have to face in the world and not know, what can I do? Well, you can choose your spot, your community, your heritage, your Earthseed community, your classroom, your home. Choose your spot and defend it with all of your strength. Allies squabble, now get over it and build coalitions. If we learn nothing from the work of Octavia Butler, it is that it is not easy to build coalition. Lauren Olamina had a lot of detractors she had to deal with, even among her closest ranks. So we all have to learn how to face that and get over it and build those coalitions. And the narrative matters. The narrative matters. So create your narrative, live by your narratives. And Octavia is not only teaching us how to live, but continuing to live through us.
Okay, that felt like a pew, like that was so good, Tananarive. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your brilliance, your wisdom, your work.
Thank you. And I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Ayana, will you come on up to the stage and share with us your responses? Where do you think Octavia was pointing towards? Ayana is a co-founder of the Octavia E. Butler Legacy Network, amongst many other things. And today I got to hear what an incredible writer she is. So yay. Hi, honey. You are muted, brilliant one.
One of the things that came up in our retreat, hi everyone, was thinking about the generations that are now and future generations, adolescents and children. And one of the things that's happened during the pandemic for me has helped me to read the parables differently is to realize that Lauren Olamina, in our timeline, she was born in 2009. So she is a 11-year-old now. She's a 12-year-old now. So she's going to turn 12 this year in July. And when we think about the children that are having had school in their living rooms, who were learning online, who were catching up, children who couldn't get access to education, and public libraries were closed, and all of these services that people rely on who need to apply for jobs or who need to do their homework. I feel like there's some ways that Octavia's books were prescient in ways that she maybe didn't even imagine, and that we got to see some of that during the pandemic. So when people like Tanana Reeve were inviting me to speak, I was like sort of in a shocked, in a state of shock, because this is something I study and meditate on all the time, but except it was happening in my living room. And I'm looking at the mountains now where the parables are. I live in Southern California, and spent some time in the archives looking at things from Wild Seed, which she wrote as a historical novel. So I always impress upon my students, and I think we were doing this in the retreat, thinking about the perspective of children and adolescents and development, a developmental process, a speculative development, if you will, not knowing what we will transform into, and that not all transformation is positive, but some of it is unexpectedly positive, but also to think about what we're leaving to them and not projecting onto them, because there's wisdom that's coming out of these experiences like Lauren Olamina that we really can't account for yet. And I think that's some of the things that really came through in all of our writing in these themes of what happens to the people who are still on Earth, what happens to the people who leave, what happens to people who evolve and their genetics transform. And we also talked about the canon of Octavia Butler, how all of the stories and books and essays and research are really, really intertwined. And that transformation, that change, that archetype of change, the prototype of change is in everything. And that really sparked something for us. And so I welcome you all to this sort of virtual community space Octavia gives us to each other. It's so profound that now that we've been doing this work for decades, right? Other people are like, oh yes, Octavia, let's make movies. Oh, I love her books. And we're like, yes, we've been inviting you to do this. And this has been our positive obsession. So it's exciting to see people encounter these things for the first time.
It's very exciting. I'm just like, yes, give me the movies I need. Thank you so much, Ayana. I really appreciate that wisdom and learning. And Autumn, sister, literal sister.
Literal sister.
Hey, sweetheart. What do you think that Octavia was offering us and pointing us towards? My sister, by the way, is a brilliant facilitator, writer, and speaker. She's been working on a brilliant novel for a decade now that is worth the wait. It's worth the wait. Some of the best novels take the longest time. So
let's hope. Yeah, there was something actually really inspiring about learning this morning during the retreat about the 80-something drafts of the novel that never made it into the world. Wow. So I've been taking so many notes as Toshi and Tanana Reeve and Ayana were speaking that I'm sort of swimming in that. But one of the things that came up for me as I was thinking about this question that you posed, Adrienne, is the lesson that I think threads across Octavia's work about attraction and aversion as two sides of the same experience that we have as humans. And I think the first way that I noticed that lesson with Octavia's work is how I experienced her writing. I remember the first book of hers that I read, I remember having a real strong aversion to her writing style, while also being deeply attracted to the stories that she was writing. And over time, I ended up coming to love her style of writing, but it's very, very a distinctive style of writing and very different from most of the other writers that I've been reading, particularly science fiction and fantasy writers. So I remember being challenged by her prose, but enthralled by her worlds. And then I noticed that same thread would emerge inside the worlds themselves that, and I think this is as true of parables as it is of the other stories like the Xenogenesis trilogy and Patternist series, that all the characters are dealing with, you know, the interplay between hatred and desire in how they are trying to make decisions and navigate the world. And I think the lesson that I take from that is that you don't know, you can't know what your suffering will teach you. And you can't know which of your sufferings are actually going to save you. And which is different from the sort of trite sensibility that your suffering always serves a purpose, or there's a meaning to your suffering, or there's like, you know, there's some reason why a terrible thing will happen. For me, her work has taken me into this sort of different layer of understanding of what is the actual role of the things that make us suffer, and what happens when we begin to transmute our suffering into movement. Oftentimes that requires us to move towards the thing that is making us suffer. All of the characters in her books, particularly the parables, are having to adapt through extremely violent conditions, and are having to confront, you know, violent urges within themselves, or confront the necessity of violence inside of how they respond to those conditions. All of her characters are having to, in some way, let go of a shoreline, you know, let go of attachments to what was. All of them are having to grieve. And then I guess the last thing I would say is that a lot of my political work right now centers around teaching sort of like core principles of Black feminism as they apply to how do we actually make Black feminist concepts actionable in the world. And one of the principles we talk about in our teaching is that from a Black feminist perspective, that we must foreground and understand ourselves to be bound by a common vision of the future, rather than a common analysis of the present. And I think that is best represented in some ways by, that principle is best represented by the parables, because there is the journey that Lauren Olamina is on. She's out in front of the other people that she's working with inside this journey, right? That she understands kind of innately, she understands that her conditions are untenable, but she's not focused on her current conditions. She is very positively obsessed and very much oriented and focused on the future that she is trying to create, much more so than the present intolerable conditions. And part of why she struggles so much with the other people that she's partnering with is their attachments to the present, their attachments to the obsession with the present conditions, right? And I think that is such a deep challenge to us right now. It's like the greatest challenge to us right now. Can we, because we invest so much meaning in our ability to analyze our current conditions and understand why the problem is what is the problem? How do we name the problem? Who gets to name the problem? Who gets to own the language of naming the problem? You know, and that, you know, the washing away of the ownership of the naming and the, like, her orientation to simply a future in which we still exist, I think is very powerful.
Thank you, sister. I think that there's a lot of goodness in that. I'm just like, yes, there just has to be something ahead of us. And it's like that vision is how we transcend the limitations of trauma, right? It's like trauma tells us, boom, we're stuck here. And it's like, but I can see further.
Yes.
That's what we're going to have to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. We're going to bring you back up in a minute, but Alexis Pauline Gums, would you come to the stage for me? Hello.
Hey, love.
Durham neighbor.
Hey, neighbor.
Hey, neighbor.
Oh
Alexis
my
Pauline
goodness.
Gums is an incredible writer, poet, activist, and member of the Earthseed community here in Durham. What did you think Octavia was pointing us towards?
First of all, everything that everyone has said, I'm like, whew, yes, yes, the download. And today was incredible. I think what I'm thinking about something that Walida said earlier during the retreat and about home, this question of being at home. And, you know, with the welcome here today, I'm thinking about that even more. And so what I would say that even more than through the first two parables and the telling name of Christopher Columbus as this spaceship that heads on a mission, Octavia Butler never publishing the parable of the trickster and being in that Eshu, Elegua, multiplicity at the crossroads of like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, but oh my gosh, it's all bad, right? Is basically all we need to know about colonialism. Don't, you know, like that's the lesson as distinct from migration, you know? And so I think that once Octavia Butler knew, okay, they're going off on this spaceship and it's called the Christopher Columbus, there wasn't a way for them to then be in right relationship with any place that they were going to relate to in a genocidal tradition. So I'm really taking that in as the other side of the question that Walida was asking. What does it mean to be at home? What do we learn about our relationship to Earth from, you know, is a love the one you with type of situation? You know, what do you learn about our relationship to Earth from realizing that our connection to this place, even with the difficulties, even with imposed scarcity through capitalism, is, and you know, Toshi says this so much, you know, on the podcast, is so connected to what it takes for us to live. And it's a relationship that we can take for granted because of how profoundly this earth has claimed us and supported us so far, which is incredible. It's an incredible generosity, you know, of this planet that we are a part of. So I would say that that's what I'm sitting with in terms of Octavia pointing the way forward, is that there is, colonialism is not a future. You know, really understanding it as what it is not a life-giving relation. It will not be a life-giving relation. And I wish that we had already learned that lesson decades and centuries before Octavia even wrote this. But if we get it today, it's not a moment too soon. So yeah, that's what I would say is the lesson that's sitting with me most strongly today, with love and gratitude to you for bringing us together and for everyone's participation, and always, always, always to Octavia.
My mind is feeling really blown by this, Alexis. Like, I'm like, right. I mean, I know that's going to happen whenever you say words out loud. But I really love how clear that is. That it's like, there's a reason, even as a writer, there's some stories you can't write. You can't make it beautiful. You can't make it compelling. And I think that's really important. So I'm going to share some thoughts. And as I do, I'd love for each of the panelists to come back on while I share. And then when I finish, we will open up the Q&A. So if you're sitting in the audience and you have questions, go ahead and start dropping them in the question Q&A box. And Jaka will come back on and help us with that. But so related to what you just said, Alexis, you know, my thinking, part of the reason I wanted to pull you all together and do this fan fiction writing is because I started last year writing some fan fiction. I was like, I think I need more parables and I need a much more satisfying thing to happen. Like I need to know what happens. I need the story to finish. And what keeps landing in my heart is this idea that we misunderstood the prophecy, that we didn't get it right, that we think it's to take root amongst the stars means to go away from earth. But it's actually that we get out there and we realize to take root amongst the stars is to root on earth, which is where we belong. It's our home, it's our place. And what does it mean to fight for and root, really truly be here? And one of the like new earth seed verses that came through in that writing process is vast is the pattern, small is the mind. Because something else that kept coming up is if these things are all connected, then how do you build a bridge between the parables and the patternist series, the parables and the Synogenesis series? Like if you want to connect them all, I think the way to do it is to harness a different relationship to time, right? And to understand like the time is something that we have created because our mind is small, right? Our mind, our comprehension is small. And so we're like 24 hours, 7 days, 1 year, short life, that is it, right? But actually the pattern is vast and it's ever changing and we can move around inside of time. And these stories move around inside of time. So what happens in the parables can influence what begins in the pattern. The pattern can save us from what happens in the parables, and all of it dances with erotic experiences with Yoankali, you know. So that feels really important. And I think one of the things that Octavia was directing us to do and to all get willing to do is be prescient. And a lot of people talk about her as a prophet, and I've danced with that because I'm like, I get why, and I feel that sometimes, but only if we use the definition that Lama Rod Owens uses for prophet, which is to be one who tells the truth about what is right now. Because when you're telling the truth about what is, it has to, you have to cut through all the illusions. And that feels futuristic to people if they're used to living in the lie of now. But if you're actually willing to look beyond the lie of now, it's like, oh, obviously, white supremacy is an illusion, patriarchy is an illusion, capitalism is an illusion that we have all been told to believe and suffer through. But they're not the real contract. They're not the real protocol of how to be on this planet. So is it prophetic or is it ancient memory? Is it ancestral? Again, dance in time, the truth is right there waiting for us. Even if you are alone in what feels prophetic, that's what I think all of her protagonists dance with is what does it mean to stand alone first? And instead of compromising the truth so that you can belong, it's saying the truth so you can find where you truly belong, right? Find the people who are truly willing to roll with you. And in the parable of the talents, we see that where she chooses these unlikely allies because she's like, I need to belong to people who are truly willing to hear me, who are ready for the prophecy. And maybe they have more privilege than I thought I was going to be speaking to. And maybe it's a homeless person who I'm speaking to, but this is who is listening. And so let's belong to each other and figure something out. I think the only two other pieces, one is kindness eases change. Kindness eases change has been the mantra for my pandemic. I feel each day when I'm achieving that and when I'm not, right? When I'm like, I just snapped at this person in the store for not having their mask over their nose. That wasn't kindness. That didn't need to change, right? If I said it nicely of like, hey, you know, I'm immune compromised and it would really help me feel safe in this space if you, right? There's ways to be in that conversation, you know? So I'm trying to remember that as I think about moving into the future, like what does kindness look like in negotiating community, negotiating vision, negotiating resources? How do we unlearn the hoarding that is unkind and move back into the generosity, which is kind? And then I think the last thing that Octavia teaches us is it doesn't need to be easy. It needs to be interesting. All of her futures are interesting and they are maturing us. So we had 3 other writers, Walida E. Marisha, we had Moya Bailey, and we had Jordan Myers there as scholars with us, all of whom contributed really brilliant things. But Jordan, who was new to me, that was an exciting new mind to get to meet. Jordan reminded us that a lot of the purpose of Earthseed is species maturation. And so it's like, what is maturing us? And I think that's a question to sit with and ask yourself, what would it look like if our species was mature? How would it feel to participate in a mature species? Are you maturing? Are you maturing the species in your life? Are you responding to what is? Because I think that's the Toni Morrison thing, is we get distracted, but like, actually, can we move away from the distraction and be maturing the species? So how do we write those stories and songs and make those invitations to our comrades? It's like, in movement, this is what I think about a lot, is like, okay, that's that mess over there, but in here, we're trying to mature the species, and we need to model that so we can invite people along a path somewhere. So let's not fall into those same traps. Or if we see the trap, we know it's within us, let's heal. That's what maturing would look like, right? So those are my things on what I feel like Octavia was pointing us towards. And that was exciting. I was like, I don't know if there's going to be anything left after y'all go, but actually I got inspired by everything y'all said. So Jaka, I think we are ready to be held in, see if some questions come in. And just a reminder, there is a Q&A box. So don't put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A box, because the chat is moving very fast with lots of people in it. Okay. Hi, Jaka.
Hi. Wow. Actually was a little hesitant to kind of come in and stop this, because a lot of requests to just let you all keep discussing, but there are a few questions, and so just gonna jump in with those. And we are going through and trying to catch the questions that were put in the chat. So the first one asked is, the question is, what Autumn was discussing around getting out of the attachment to present conditions. How do we square this need with the reality that we are materially bound by our current conditions and can only move forward from this moment in time? How do we build bridges to better, more just futures without being boxed in by our present conditions? Wonderful question from Noni.
I would love to jump in and answer that. This is Tananarive, if I may, because it just reminds me of the conditions that my mother was facing as a college student at Florida A&M University. Jim Crow was entrenched. It had been entrenched for generations. There was no clear path out. But as soon as she was exposed to a workshop with a strategy, she and her sister by themselves started a core chapter at Florida A&M University that soon bloomed to like thousands of students marching. And I really do feel that the deep power, both of Octavia's work and Afrofuturism in general, is that it is so focused on leadership. So, we get tired of arguing with people and trying to convince people. And my thing is, I don't have to convince you. If I walk on this path where the road is clear and y'all want to stay on this path that's flooded, eventually you're going to have sense enough to come up on the clear path where we're walking, right? And I think Octavia, her work was her walk. Her work was her example. And there's no part of our society that we can't think of one action to confront, to try to light that spark where others will follow.
Yeah, I want to kind of invite Alexis Pauline Gums to tell us a little bit about how time works.
Yeah.
And materiality, because I think that my response to that question was like, are we materially bound by anything? Alexis, what do you think?
Are we materially bound? I think that there's a possibility of being in material relation. It's just that we're not limited by that. So I think that what I know is that we're not separate. Time can't separate us. Space can't separate us. We can believe a story about separation and act accordingly, which is another word, for capitalism, or, every form of oppression is a story about separation. And that's the violence of it. That's the core violence of it that manifests in material ways. So yeah, I would say that presence is not a temporal category. Presence is the reality of connection and our ability to act in accordance with that reality, which is, it's always possible. It may be that it's always happening and that I'm not at the point of perception where I perceive it always happening at all times. But what I know at this stage is that it's always possible.
Yeah, I love that. And I just want to throw into that I think of our enslaved ancestors with this question too, that I'm like, it's that same practice you talk, it's the same, like there was a period where everything they could see behind them was slavery, and there was still 4 generations or so to go of slavery. And it didn't mean there weren't visionaries operating and building with each other and imagining something else and stealing away and poisoning master's food and up to some resistance. And I think if I was going to say anything, it would be find the resistance that actually satisfies your soul that you can do in this moment. And it looks different for everyone. So for some people, it is direct action. For some people, it's writing new stories. For some people, it's raising radical ass kids. We got to start off with the ARC community school, and I've just been sitting in that all week, how blown open my heart is and how I feel like I'm good. I can retire. I can just sit down. I don't need to do anything else. They got it. Their hair looks good. The fashion looks good. Everyone's going to listen to them. They got the music. It's all good. And that feeling, that's because some people, their radical choice was, I'm going to parent these kids and put them in a community school. And someone was like, I'm going to make sure to teach them, and we're going to teach them music. And someone was like, we're going to connect them to these ideas of Octavia, like the lineage. So just a reminder, it's like, you're the only one who knows what the radical act is for you that is going to satisfy your lifetime. But think of your lifetime in the long arc rather than in just the short round. We're not in the loop, we're in the long arc always.
Thank you. I think, you mentioned Alexis, connection, and one of the other questions is around, given that Octavia encourages a unified vision, how can organizations pushing for change formally align with allies to unify a vision and benefit from each other's skills? And that can go to anyone.
I just want to say, I don't think that Octavia is pushing for unified vision, because if that were the case, then she would have no stories in her characters. And she's very suspect of the charismatic leader. And Adrian and I, and probably Toshi, like all of us, have talked about the danger of becoming the guru or the leadership head who thinks that their own linear vision and individuality gets things done. Instead, I think she's showing us some various ways of being in leadership and in right relationship to change. And really, I'm going to steal from Toshi. Toshi says like, oh, the opera may be the navel, right? Or it might be this pond, but I think there's also this ocean. And when we fill up our consciousness to raise the water levels, all of those little ponds, your umbilical cord connects to everyone else's. We're in a marsupial pouch, as it were, trying to evolve and grow the human species. And I don't think that means a unified vision. When you read Octavia's journals and when you look at the archives, you see that there was no unified vision, and that she sometimes is referring to herself as we, because she knows she's not an individual person, but she's made up of multiple selves. And we get to try out those multiple selves and maybe separated bodies, but we're literally breathing the same air that she breathed, that our ancestors breathed, drinking the same water. So I really want to counter that intent and think about the various kinds of leadership that she found suspect and the subversive, mycelial connections that she fostered that we didn't even realize existed. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
That was fantastic.
I know, I was just like, marsupial pouch.
And I think I always go back to the simplicity of the agreements on the highway. It's like such a wretched position to be in. And it's like, we will not kill each other. We will not steal from each other. We will watch each other's backs. And we chant that in the opera, and I chant that every day. And I think that a lot of us should be chanting that. It's, if you want to work with other organizations or other humans, like, don't hurt them, and be available to not just be yourself, but to actually watch out for them, and to not, like, you know, you can add other things other than, you know, won't kill, won't steal, watch each other's backs, but come up with those simple agreements, whether you actually say them out loud or you just activate them. I find that's the way that you invite collaboration.
I was
Yeah,
just
there's some. Oh, go
say,
ahead.
sorry, just say the obvious in case the person asking the question hasn't gotten a chance to read Emergent Strategy yet, that it's full of strategies for organizations, or ways for organizations to move forward together in alignment with nature.
Wonderful. One of the questions that's pretty popular is if we wanted to read those drafts that you were talking about, Adrian, which archive holds them, and are they open to the public?
So we were actually having talks about like how to access stuff. So the drafts that we are talking about are at the Huntington Library, which holds the full archive of Octavia's papers. There's a few articles, and I can drop a link in the chat. There's an article by Jerry Canavan that actually has a kind of overview of that. And then Ayana was talking about, there's been some shifts in terms of how to access those. It used to be that you had to be a scholar with an institute who applied and went through this whole process. But now it feels like there's some easier ways to actually be able to access the papers and go and have a read. So I'll find that link. And Ayana, is there anything you want to add on that?
Just that the materials are accessed through a research library, and the research librarian has changed the policy so that regular people can, you know, basically get registered and go and see, you know, what's in there. It's changed a lot since, you know, people like Alexis and I were emailing this woman who, you know, emailing her for years. And to date, Octavia's collection is the most popular collection, above Jack London, Charles Isherwood, you know, Gutenberg, everything that's in there. So we will give you the link so that you can become a reader. And when you get here, look me up, because I would love to meet you and be in community with you. This is my calling. And I've gotten to do this with almost everyone. Autumn's going to be next, I think.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll give you those resources so that you can seek that out.
That's wonderful. We actually have a lot of calls in the chat to, you know, build community following this event. Lots of people wanting to connect. So one of the other questions is around, you know, what can Octavia and/or Lauren teach those of us who are longing for ancestral connection or just starting on the path of ancestral remembrance and healing as practice for just futures? And Adrian, that's not me planting the question, it's actually someone else, because I asked you that question yesterday.
I was like, it's my favorite question. Well, I want to share what came up yesterday, because we were talking about this in the Black and Indigenous community building, was that, you know, one of the things that can really be painful is for those of us who are not Indigenous and who don't necessarily have a clear sense of like, oh, this is my lineage. For those of us whose lineage was intentionally severed, politically severed, I had this question years ago, and I was like, what do I do if I don't know my ancestry beyond, you know, one generation or 1.5, 2 generations? What do I know if all of that was lost? How do I ever find my Indigenous story and my purpose? You know, if we think of it as we were all given some original instructions, and to be Indigenous in some way means I'm still connected to those original instructions in that original place. What does it mean to be so displaced, and how do we still feel and hear? And so I gave 2 thoughts. One came from a friend, Carla Perez, who was like, that is your Indigenous story. That displacement and the colonialism and the crisis and the tragedy and all of that is the Indigenous story. That is the human story that you are attending to. and recovering the instruction, they're within you. So they didn't go somewhere. They're still in you. They just are not spoken to you in that same way. You have to go about listening in a different way. And then I offered to choose ancestors, right? To find your ancestors, to listen for your ancestors, but also to choose ancestors in your lineage. And so I can turn this and show y'all my ancestor altar, which has a lot of chosen ancestors, right? I have my family members up there, but I also have Nina Simone, and I have Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler and James Baldwin and Malcolm X and tons of Grace Lee Boggs and other people who, when I look at them, I'm like, that's the kind of human I want to be. That's the species maturation I want to forward. So find the ancestors that you want to give your life to. Think of it as, I want to surrender and let my life be in use of forwarding what you were up to. So I think that is one of the ways. And I also say, you can totally say, I only want ancestors who have a benevolent intention towards me and mine and towards the world. Because for those of us who are mixed race, there's a little bit of like, not you, and that's fine.
Thank you. And Ayana also talked about this is in, what you're studying in ethnic studies, and it's in all the Octavia's work. So thank you for highlighting that. So one of the questions is if you could talk a little bit more about the relationship between Olamina and her daughter Larkin. And so Larkin being quite critical of her mother and her commitment to Earthseed. Can you talk about how Earthseed is different from other faith beliefs?
Toshi.
Oh my God, just go to the podcast for the season 2, because Adrian and I had an amazing journey, with Parable of the Talents. And I think the one thing about it was how Octavia wrote the timelines, the multiple experiences within similar timelines. So, and not timeline, that the swirl of time was kind of unbelievable. So you had the journal writing, but then you also have Larkin's reflections. And it was an amazing viewpoint. I think about it a lot, because the distance between them, the actual space between them that they each missed to like find each other is the thing that broke. They're so close. Their vibrations are close. Their sense of strategy is similar. Larkin as a little girl had to navigate abuse, had to navigate these hateful mourning parents, had to navigate a church system that was not spiritual enough for her, had to navigate all these things, and then had, found a relative who was intentionally keeping her away from her mother. And then Lauren just made her life's work, Earthseed, and finding her daughter. And they were like this close. Like, it's like you could push through the wall, and by the time they met, it's almost like the length, the whatever you build around yourself when you are too hurt in a certain place, whatever that is, it's almost like something all over you. You have yourself, and then you have this thing that you built. Nobody can really see it, so you can walk around being in your life. But as soon as they saw each other, those things had the conversation, had the meeting. They actually didn't get to meet each other. They didn't have enough time. The things that each of them built about the other, and whatever the circumstances were, those were the things that met. And it's just like, it's just your heart just breaks, and you're like, where is the person to help with this conversation? Who's sitting them down and bringing them tea? Like, who's holding Larkin's hand and making her feel safe? Who's helping Lauren to breathe because she's so angry? Like, who is there to help find the place? You all are like, just poke through the wall you made already. It's not serving you now. And it just didn't happen in this story. And what they got to have, though, is it matters everything they did to find out where the other was and locate them. And it doesn't matter that Lauren hated Earthseed for a long time. It doesn't matter that she thought bad things about her mom until she started to learn other information. It almost doesn't matter how much Lauren is mad at her brother for keeping her daughter away, because they each operated in systems that made sense to them and that held their, not just their survival, but their container for their beings. So Larkin loved things, loved to sing, was creative, was a caring person, did all of these things, and brought forth the story of her mother's life. Just saying. And Lauren got to the destiny, and sometimes you don't, I just was like, sometimes you don't get through to everything, but it was like, we would sit there. If you have time to listen to us in that season, we like went on those journeys between Lauren and Larkin and between Lauren and Marcus. It just is like, it's some of the heaviest loads I felt Octavia gave us to ponder. And it's so close to all of us who have, relationships with other humans. Like, it's just like, yeah.
Well, I think all of everything you just said as per usual. And I would say the only addition is it humbles me when I read those texts to remember to put curiosity first. Like, even when I'm angry, even when I don't understand, and especially with those who are from generations before, because it's looking at something and being like, I don't actually know what you went through. I'm so angry with you for the results, but I don't really know what you went through and why you made the choices or commitments, how those beliefs kept you alive. And there's something about radical, loving curiosity that when we were reading it, and you'll hear us in the podcast, we're like, if only they would have asked a freaking question. Like, either one of them had any curiosity about what was it like for you? Because I know it was hard for me and it hurt for me, but what was it like for you? And as a mediator, that's almost always the moment of transition, the moment where something becomes possible that wasn't possible, is if I can be like, I know that you're so angry, but can you also wonder what happened for this person and what it was like for them? Even like, is it a 1% possibility of curiosity? And can we grow that,
I think Lauren could not activate God is change in that moment, and I'm grateful for Octavia, like, putting that in there, that you can create powerful and amazing systems that serve you and like 85% of your life. And then there's that other percentage that you can't surface it, and you might be just so disappointed that you couldn't surface it. And I always want to rub Lauren Alamina's back and remind her she walked through fire. I'm just like, what? You walked through fire. Like, you didn't get this one, you walked through fire. And I think there's times, that's one thing to remember for ourselves, is that we hold a lot of wisdom and compassion, and then sometimes it doesn't show up when we want it to. And you might want to spend a lot of time feeling terrible and you rub your back and say, well, you know what, we actually are a whole human being. And sometimes we don't get to all the places we want to. So I'm going to rub myself and just let's try again,
I want to offer something into this moment. I actually missed the question because my internet just disappeared. But the exchange that I heard between the two of you, Toshi and Adrienne, made me think of something about the relationship between Lauren, Larkin, and Marcus, that what happens when the instinct to protect others fails us, and how often it is that the instinct or attempt to protect others ultimately creates cascading harm. Because I think in each of their stories, right, there's either I was acting to protect you or someone from you, or I'm angry that you did not protect me, or you know, right, that there's something about that, you know, why didn't you hold a container for me? And I think about this as a parent all the time, because I think that the constant lesson that I'm learning as a parent is that I actually can't protect my children from almost anything. And oftentimes, if I'm showing up in their lives in a way that where the places where I tend to do the most like exertion of control in a problematic way are the places where I'm often trying to protect them. And then there's a cascade of harm that comes from it. Yeah, I think it's a really, really provocative lesson that she puts before us in that set of relationships. Because I think that that's also the thing we're so afraid of in apocalypse, right? Is like, how will we protect ourselves? How will we protect each other? How will we protect our people? And it's not actually necessarily even the right question.
So many amazing things coming out here, and there's still so many questions that we haven't been able to get to, and the time is coming close to an end for us for our time today. So wanted to take some time to thank you all for after, you know, what I'm sure was a really amazing time together, but still perhaps, you know, being in front of these screens, it takes a lot of energy out of us. And so you really am appreciative of you coming and sharing your wisdom and everything that you have, your positive obsession with us. It's been very impactful. And wanting to thank everyone who participated in the conversation today, all the audience members. We have you know, a really great turnout, of course, and wanting to thank Talia for starting us off in a good way, and you know, sharing stories from her people. And really thank you, Adrian, Alexis, Ayana, Toshi, Autumn, and Tananarive, who had to go and do that homeschooling life. That's always just so enjoyable. And you know, on behalf of the Morris J. Wass Center for Dialogue, we really thank everyone for joining us on this wonderful conversation. This is actually the wrap-up event. Sorry.
I know, I was like, Jaka, can I say something?
Of course, yeah.
You know, this has been months and months of planning and thought and effort and work and love and intention and dreaming. I mean, so much went into this week. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I wrote my team today and I was like, I can't even express how overwhelming the week has been, like what it has felt like to be held while I'm living in such admiration and gratitude. And it feels like holding Octavia, you know, it's like, I feel like holding Octavia and being held while holding Octavia, and then being like, here's my other community who holds Octavia, and we're all holding Earth, because Earth is her teacher, Earth is our teacher. And it's just been so sacred to be well held in all that holding. So I just want to thank everyone, because I know it was tons and tons of people at Simon Fraser University who contributed to this. And I just want you all to know, like, it really matters and it really has changed me. It's really impacted my sense of my work mattering and my work being worth it, and like the lonely prophetic moments and the communal beautiful celebratory moments. And I just want to say, like, this community, all of the people on this call right now, we're peers in this, and all the people who are watching, and maybe you're typing in the chat, you're also peers in this. We're all responsible for doing this work. And we all may end up with different spotlights shown on us, but we're all peers in this work. And isn't that good news? So I just want to say thank you for gathering the peers together this week. And thank you for loving me.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And there's lots of calls to continue these conversations. So I think there'll be some follow-up invitations to do that as well. So thank you all for joining us today, and really hoping to send you off on a beautiful, relaxing weekend. Take care of yourselves.
And like, no one wants to